before we dive in, most of us want to know these tactical frameworks or tactical techniques, or something that we call as hacks that we can use before we prepare for a behavioral interview or any kind of interview, anywhere from a telephonic chat to right up to the technical interviews and the behavior. I know you are focusing primarily on behavior, but let's start broadly and then move a bit and deep dive into other areas.
Yeah, so the behavioral interview is a really interesting space. You may have more than one, you may talk to several different people, right? And the reason that, especially big tech companies, but more and more even like consulting companies are doing different types of interviews, because they found that they need different types of interviews to elicit different skills, right? So it's important to note that even if you are interviewing for a technical role, the behavioral interview isn't really to show off your technical prowess. It's really for them to be able to feel out, who are you as a person and how are you going to fit into our company culture? But you should also look at it as an opportunity for you to be interviewing them and figuring out, is this a place that fits my work style? Is this a place that I'm going to fit in and be able to have a successful career? And I know that sounds a little bit daunting. And so I have kind of some key things that I like to keep in mind when I'm going into the behavioral interview. And the big takeaway here is preparation is key, because unlike in a technical interview or even something like a case interview where what you say is important, in a behavioral interview, it's not just what you say, it's how you say it. Because the way that you express yourself, the words that you choose, your intonation, the way that you interact with people says a lot about who you are as a person and how you fit into a team culture, right? And so I want to talk today a little bit about how you do that and what the things are they're looking for. So really critical things to remember in an interview, or for the behavioral interview, are things like, when should I be saying I to highlight my own skills? But really, when should you be saying we, right? If you only say I and never we, that's kind of a red flag. But also, if you only say we and never I, it's hard to identify what exactly your skill set is and what value you bring to the table. So finding that balance is really important. There's also this ability to communicate, right? Communication is really important. And I know Swerby brought it up at the beginning, but these soft skills really are critical. So the behavioral interview, even if they're asking you about your experience working on a technical project, what they're really looking for is your ability to communicate technical concepts that are complicated or complex clearly and concisely, and in a way that is consumable by perhaps a non-technical audience, right? They're also looking for, are you an individual contributor? How are you going to join a team and be able to drive that team to success? How are you a leader? What vision are you going to bring to the team that you would be working on? Also, in some companies, I know this was true in my role in IBM, the roles were not black and white. Even though I was in a technical role, I was often called to support the sales team and the business teams on client-facing work, right? Since I was building the technology, they wanted me to explain to the client what we were doing and what our progress was. So what they're looking for in this interview is, are you gonna only sit behind a computer and write a bunch of code? Or could we maybe bring you in front of the client every once in a while, right? What is your leadership potential? What is your growth potential? Right? And so the key here is, you're going to be able to explain all of that, but you're not going to come up with all of it on the spot. And so what you need to do is pick 3 to 5 stories that you want to tell, right? And practice these stories. So why do I say 3 to 5? I know everyone's really into elevator pitches, right? Having your pitch to sell to an organization. And while that is important, I feel an elevator pitch is often very limiting when you have to fill 30 minutes of space talking about yourself, right? So Preparation is key, because if you want to master that how to say it correctly, you have to have already nailed the what beforehand, right? And even I've been there. You get flustered when you're trying to think of the answer to the question, find the right words, especially if English is not your native language, tell the story in a compelling way, and make sure you're highlighting all the things you're supposed to highlight about yourself. So I have come up with a framework that I use to help me be prepared, so I have the what mastered before I walk into that room, so I can really focus on the how and highlighting my skills. So Apurva, did you want to jump in here with any questions?
I think, Krista, let's get to the framework, but I and probably a lot of us do have a question about individual contribution versus leadership. A lot of us, when we come here, come with probably sometimes no experience at all, or just a couple of years of experience. So do you have any suggestions or inputs as to when I could be asked, portraying that I'm an individual contributor, and when is it person specific, is it role specific? When am I talking about, say, the I, or when am I talking about the we, or me exhibiting leadership qualities?
That's a really good question, because they're not going to ask you directly in an interview question, tell me about a time where you individually contributed to something, right? These questions are a little bit more masked, right? They're going to ask something like, tell me about yourself, or tell me a time where you worked on a project with a team, or tell me a time when you showed initiative, right? So one, the type of question they ask you is important, right? So obviously a question about initiative, they're really asking about your leadership capabilities, right? Whereas when they ask you, tell me about a time you worked on a team, they might be asking, all right, how does this person collaborate? How can this person bring an idea to the table and really share that expertise with the group without overshadowing the group, or without holding the group back? So you have to listen for kind of what the question is, and then pick the answer to that, right? Or one of the hard questions is always, tell me about a challenge that you overcame. And you're going to pick or choose certain characteristics that you want to highlight in that story. And so the second element to that is, right, the masked question, but also, who are you talking to, right? So a lot of times these behavioral interviews will be done by senior leadership, right? So this might be to the person you might be reporting to, or even to your boss's boss, and they may have a business background, right? That's where you're going to want to really show that you can speak not just in technical terms, right? You can make that transition. But if you're talking to an engineer, it's totally fine to get a little bit techie, but you want to make sure that you're speaking to the role that you're interviewing for and the role that they're looking for, right? An engineer is likely looking for someone to be on their team. So you're going to want to show how you're of value to that team, right? Whereas you might also be interviewing with your future peers, right? So that's going to be an important time to highlight how you can get along with people.
Okay, those are great insights. I think, just to reiterate, below 45 seconds, what Krista says is, start with 3 to 5 stories, and these 3 to 5 stories can have multiple questions. For example, if it is a leadership question, it can be framed differently, whereas then individual contributor questions could be, for example, if they say something, I think Amazon is very, very notorious for some of these leadership questions, saying, tell me about a time where you exhibited bias to action. Tell me about a time where you were obsessed with the customer. These are the principles it's trying, but they're testing these leadership qualities that you have. So depending on the person you're interviewing with or for, you change your response accordingly from these 3 to 5 star stories. Is that right, Krista?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And actually, you're setting up the framework really nicely, because right, you want to have a couple of stories kind of in your back pocket. So rather than just having one story from start to finish that you're going to tell, I like to break them down into consumable little bites. So when I'm answering a question, I can say, oh, I'm going to pick this from this story. I'm going to pick this from this story, and this from this story. And then you have the answer to your question, because the bits and pieces that you want to highlight, you've already figured out.
Sounds great. Let's dive in then.
All right. So I like to think about my experience in terms of projects, right? Because I think projects are a really great thing, because especially projects that have happened in the past, because they have a beginning, a middle, and an end, which lends itself very nicely to storytelling. So I break up each of my projects. I choose 3 to 5 that I like to highlight, right? And I have my 3 or 5 that are my go-tos. And I break it into 4 parts. 1, a basic description. And you need a basic description for a couple reasons. 1, just for context for the person you're talking to, right? They don't know your story. You got to give them some background. But the other thing is they're looking for your communication, right? Can you clearly and coherently explain what you did, right? And then, especially if you're looking at tech companies, right, they're going to want to know what the technical solution was that you built, right? So be able to explain the product or the tool or the solution that you are working on in plain language, right? And why are they asking this? Again, can you communicate things that are complex in a clear and concise way? Can you translate sometimes very complex math into something that's consumable by leadership, right? And then I break it down into, am I, right, an individual contributor, right? So I want to be able to show that I understand both business value and technical value, right? And this is really where I'm starting to say, I did this that contributed to this part of the team. We accomplished this, right? This is where you're really starting to break out that, all right, when am I going to say that I did something? And when am I going to say that we as the team were able to do this together, right? And that's going to help start pointing to what is your individual value that you bring, right? And then also I have a special call out for leadership, right? Because what is talking about my leadership abilities say in the behavioral interview? 1, it shows that I have growth potential at the company. A lot of these tech companies are up or out, right? So if I'm already talking about myself in the company's leadership values, that shows that I can climb that ladder. I can move up, right? It also shows that you are able to bring vision to projects. You're able to think critically and clearly and bring innovation to what you do, and not just be a robot that does tasks that you're told to do, right? So these are the 4 fundamental components of every story. So if you have 3 stories, each story is going to have these 4 pieces, right? So story number 1, description, tech solution, individual contribution, leadership. Story number 2, description, tech solution, individual contribution, leadership. Before I dive into an example of Purva, do you want to ask any questions?
I do have a question. So I think, Krista, I think looping back to the IC versus the leadership highlight, what on many teams, I don't have any leadership experience. I'm just an individual contributor. Somebody is giving me a task and I'm doing it. What then?
So that's not true. Just because you're told to do a task doesn't mean you don't have leadership capabilities, right? So if you haven't necessarily been in a leadership role, you can still talk about how you were a leader on your team, contributing new ideas, right? Speaking up in meetings when you think something's going wrong, or when you have an idea for what the direction may be, right? So even if your idea wasn't adopted, right, it's a great story to tell about how you were a part of a group project even at school, and you had an idea that you thought would be a really great contribution to whatever the assignment was. That's leadership, right? Even if that idea wasn't adopted, you're able to highlight, you know what? I can think about this project or this problem critically and speak my mind, right? That's a leadership capability. So really think about, what does it mean to be a leader? Because leadership does not always come from title. Leadership comes from actions. So think about, how do you express yourself? How do you communicate what's important to the people around you? And that's going to help you identify where you're a leader.